Well, hello everyone, and today we are, believe it or not, in week 7. We are fast going through this course, and as you know, we're going to be taking break pretty soon. But what I wanted to do today is backtrack a little bit and go to chapter 3. Now, uh, when we take a look at contemporary theories and alternate theories of leadership, we have what's called the Hersey-Blanchard situational leadership matrix. And that's what I want us to focus on today. Tomorrow we'll get into some basics of chapter 7 and then we'll go on from there. But today, let's take a look at chapter 3 in your textbook about Hersey-Blanchard's leadership matrix. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to begin chapter 3, which deals with contingency approaches to leadership. We have a few more definitions we need to clarify. The first one is contingency. Contingency is a theory meaning one thing depends on another thing or on other things. And if you remember me talking to you a few days ago, it might have been last week, where we talked about systems theory, where you have to be able to step away from the trees to see the forest because one thing can influence another and another influences something else. This is kind of like contingency, where no one best way of leadership can be applied in every situation. There are different factors that you have to take into consideration and then incorporate the best leadership style based on those different variables. So the contingency approach is an approach that seeks to delineate the characteristics of, see here, situations and followers, and examine the leadership styles that can be used effectively. So if you remember when I told you last week that in the past the follower had to adapt to the leader style, made no difference if it was congruent or if there was a unity there, the follower just had to deal with it. You have to do what the boss says and you have to follow the boss's or the leader's style. Now, that has changed. Today, we have to take a look at the situation and the follower and adapt our leadership style to the situation and to the follower. And that's contingency approaches. So let's talk about that a little bit more in detail. You have first the universalistic approach, which takes a look at just the leader and the leader's traits and behaviors as it applies to the outcomes, which means performance, satisfaction, and other indicators. Now, under the universalistic approach, there's a cookie-cutter ideology where if the leader has these traits and behaviors, he or she can apply it to every situation and it'll be fine. That's not necessarily the case. Today, we have discovered that the contingency approach will take into consideration the leader, the follower, and the situation before deriving outcomes, which would be the same, performance, satisfaction, and whatever. So the leader's style, the leader's traits, the leader's behaviors, position, and so forth have to be taken into consideration. The needs of the follower, maturity of the follower, training of the follower, cohesion of the follower or followers has to take a prominent role in your consideration. And what about the situation? You have the task, you have the structure, you have the systems, and then you have the environment. All of these combined will determine how the leader will adapt his or her leadership style, and you'll get the outcomes that adaptation will derive. Now, Exhibit 3.2 gives us really the 4 quadrants of behavior and leader styles. You have the low task, high relationship type of behavior. And here you're a participator or supportive type of leader. You provide support and encouragement. You develop the followers. You consult followers when making decisions and solving problems. So you're very low on getting the job done in comparison to maintaining good relationships. But here you also have low task, low relationship. And here you just delegate out. You don't care really about the person or the job. Hey, I need you to go and do this, and let them do it. You don't do follow-up. You don't give feedback. You don't provide supportive behaviors and so forth. You just leave them up to themselves to do the job. Over here in the right high quadrant, you see the high task, high relationship. And these are coaches. And they combine task and relationship behaviors, so they combine the best of both. You have a high regard for the people, but you also have a high regard for the task. And then you have high task, low relationship, where you're the authoritarian. And if you remember from last week, I told you these are the ones who are the do as I say, period. I don't want your input. I don't care about your contribution. Just get the job done. And really, that's what the person is there for in this type of leader's mind. They're just there to get the job done. So you see a difference, a profound difference in each of these quadrants as we consider whether a person is going to be more oriented towards people or if they're going to be more oriented towards the job. Now, situational theory is a theory that's been around for quite a while. Hersey and Blanchard are the ones who came up with the situational leadership model. This is one of my favorite models. I used to use it in the military, and many of us in the military used it quite frequently because it considers not only the leadership style that you incorporate, but also it has a heavy emphasis on the follower's readiness style. So from a definition standpoint, Hersey and Blanchard's extension of the leadership grid, it focuses on the characteristics of followers as the important element of the situation and consequently of determining effective leader behavior. Now, what does all of that mean? Well, Hersey and Blanchard have given us 4 types of leadership styles that we're going to look at now. The first is the telling style. And here, you're more directive. You reflect a high concern for tasks and a low concern for people and relationships. Here, you're worried more about them learning the job, knowing how to do the job, than building rapport in relationships with the people. In fact, when you get a person who is in this type of readiness level, it's more of a just watch me, do what I tell you to do, watch what I do, and don't do anything else. So you're more directive. The selling style, it's based on a high concern for both relationships and tasks. Participating style, and it's characterized by high relationship and low task behavior. And then delegating style, and it reflects a low concern for both tasks and relationships. Now we're going to take a look at this in the next slide and see a visual depiction of it. As you can see, the situational model of leadership goes through a series of quadrants. Here you see the telling style, and that is a person who is at a readiness level 1. They're unable and unwilling or insecure. Unable means they don't have the skills necessary to do the job. They are not knowledgeable. They're brand new, for instance, and as such, they're unwilling to do the job. Now, a readiness level is comprised of skill and willingness to do the job, skill and motivation. So at the R1 level, you have someone who is brand new. They don't know anything. So you're going to have to incorporate the telling style. Hey, just watch me. I'm not going to ask you to do anything right now because I know you don't know what you're doing. So you'll be more directive. But notice, you're not going to stay here. You're going to move up. You're going to advance to the style 2, which is selling. And that's where you explain decisions and provide opportunity for clarification. Now, as you can see, this would be used for readiness level 2. They're unable but willing or confident. They have seen enough, and under your direction, they might have been able to demonstrate a little bit, and now they're getting their confidence up a little bit, and now you just have to sell it to them. and you explain the rationale behind why you do things the way you do, and so forth. So you bring them from 1 to 2, and from 2 you want to move over to 3, which is participating. And that's where you share ideas and facilitate in decision making. You're no longer telling them what to do here. Now you are facilitating decision making. Well, what do you think about this? What would be a better way of doing that? And these are for the people who are in the R3, able but unwilling or insecure. To give you an example, when I was in seminary, I learned everything that I needed to learn to be a pastor, as far as preaching and all of that. But nothing took the place of getting behind the pulpit for the first time in my own church. Man, I was as nervous as I could be. So I was very insecure. So what I needed at that time was just encouragement. Someone to help talk me through the ideas and the things that I needed to be able to address, not only from behind the pulpit, but as a pastor. So here, participative management was the style that you would want to incorporate. Maybe you're a senior pastor and you're developing young pastors in your ministry. When they get to the point where they know the Bible and they know the fundamentals of preaching, getting out there and doing it is a whole different area, and many of them just never get over that fear. But participating is this readiness level 3, so your style should be in the 3rd quadrant, participating. And then at the end, we have here delegating, and that's where you turn over the responsibility to that person. They are able and willing or confident. That's the highest readiness level that you can have. Why would you want to micromanage them if they know what they're doing? And here's the mistake that a lot of people make. You may have an individual who is high in readiness, but yet you still want to tell them everything they need to do. What do you think that's going to do to their morale? Also, you may have a person who is at R1, but yet you want to just delegate things to them, and they're not trained yet. They're not capable of doing the job. Situational leadership can be used in just about every avenue of business and in ministry. But unfortunately, few people do it, because the key to situational leadership is getting out there and assessing your people, knowing where they are at this point in time as far as willingness, confidence, ability, and so forth. But once you have a person, you've been able to assess where they're at as far as readiness goes. You need to apply the different styles to that person's readiness level. They're not going to apply their readiness level to your style. The adverse should take place. You should be adjusting your leadership style to them. And the goal is to bring them through those quadrants to get to the end point where you're delegating things to them at that point in time. Now, what's the benefit of that? Well, you're going to have a fully developed employee, for one thing. They're going to be able to do the things that you've had to do in the past. So what is that going to do for you? It's going to free you up so that you can go and pursue other ministry considerations, or go to and do other things in the workplace that you've been called to do. The more you have to do for someone else, the less time you're going to have to do your own job. So there are definite advantages to all of that. But making sure you know where your people are, and again, no one is the same. That's why you have to use the contingency approach. You have to look at your style, the person's following style, and are following a readiness level, and the situation that you're in before applying your style of leadership or the appropriate style of leadership. So it's a very important concept to understand. We used it again in the military extensively, and it worked, and it'll work for you. Now, one other thing, too, about this is that at any given time, a person can regress. That means they may go from a readiness level 4 all the way back down to readiness level 1. For instance, what if a new technology comes into the workplace and that person has never done that before? You may have to take that person and train them on how to use that new technology, or maybe they're going and transferring to another unit in that department or in that organization. They've never been there before. So what was natural and where they were on top of the world in one environment, that environment changed now, so they may go back to 1 or 2 or 3 in the readiness levels. So they can be anywhere at any given time based on the situation. So you need to be able to assess where they are at any given time and apply the right leadership method at any given time. And here's just a reiteration of what we've already talked about. For low readiness, you want to use the telling style, the directive, authoritarian type of leadership. The moderate readiness level, use the selling leader style. High readiness, use the participating leadership style. They know what to do. It's just a matter now of just encouraging them. For instance, Barnabas was an encourager. I would say he was more of a participative leader in Paul's life when Paul was converted. We know that Paul needed some encouragement. He needed someone to back him up because everybody else was terrified of him. But Barnabas got in there and he was an encourager. He helped Paul tremendously. Paul had had his experience with the Lord on the road to Damascus. It changed Paul's life, but Paul had not been given the opportunity yet to go out and demonstrate his abilities. So Paul needed someone to encourage him, bring him along, and thank God for the Barnabas people in the world who do that, and they help tremendously. And very high readiness. Use the delegating leadership style. You see that in Matthew 28, when Jesus said, "All authority has been given to me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore into all the nations, making disciples, baptizing in the name of the Holy Ghost." And what is Jesus doing here? He's commissioning. He's delegating that authority and that responsibility to his disciples. He had spent the time as a teller, as a seller, as a participator, and now he's the delegator, telling them to go on out and you duplicate all that I have been doing and showing you for these past 3 years. And folks, again, if you're looking for a model of leadership, the best model in the world that we have is the one that we have in Jesus Christ. So I would encourage you to practice this. You may have people in your church who work for you that may be at any one of these readiness levels. Try practicing those leadership styles. You may be in business and have people working for you. Try those leadership styles. What about your home? What if you're trying to teach your children different things? This could work out great even in your home life. So situational leadership, contingency approaches, they're very important, they're very relevant, and if you incorporate them the way they're supposed to be utilized, I can promise you'll be a more effective leader and a more productive leader in the workforce and in the ministry. Well, today we took a look at a few other concepts in leadership, but really what I want you to focus on is the matrix that Hersey Blanchard came out with. And as you saw, there are different styles that fit the readiness level of the individual. As we've said from the very beginning, in the past, it wasn't like this. It was pretty much a situation where the follower had to conform to the leader's style, and the leader just had one style. And today we see that that's different. The leader has to be adaptable, they have to be flexible, and they have to be able to assess the individual readiness levels of each of their employees or followers and be able to apply the appropriate leadership styles to that readiness level. Well, that's all we have for today. Have a good day, and we'll continue on with Chapter 7 followership tomorrow.